Councilman Martin?
Yes, I'm here.
Councilman Aragosa?
Here.
Councilman Galuski?
Here.
Councilwoman Worzbowski? Here. Supervisor Kettsley?
Here, folks, I see that we've lost the ability to show a camera for some reason on here. It was working fine a minute ago, but we do not have that. Jason says I'm on mute. I'm not still on mute, am I, Jason? Hold on, folks. Okay, you can hear me now, I'm being told, but you can't see me, which is probably a good thing. So we'll just move on, and if we get the camera back, we'll start with it. I think the camera is back. So sorry about that little hiccup, whatever happened. But we do have the whole town board here with us, as you can see. We called the roll, right, Linda? Yeah, sorry. So now we'll move on to town council reports. I'll start on my left with Councilman Galuski.
I just wanted to commend the folks and applaud the organizers and planners of the July 4th parade on a great event under the circumstances. I was happy to participate in it. I know there was some concern about how well social distancing would be maintained and how well the COVID protocols would be respected, and it came off fantastic. I was very proud to see how all our residents conducted themselves, proud to participate, and I think we spread a lot of happiness and cheer in the community by having the parade. So I think it was a great event. Just wanted to say great job with that. Also just wanted to mention I've been trying to achieve my personal fitness goals that I referenced earlier in the year, and then had occasion a couple of times now to walk the path in Glenville that hugs the river, the path that's been subject to for the past couple of years, multiple applications for grant money that we recently were awarded money on. I don't know what the status of that is with everything being held up right now, but I just wanted to say it's the first, I've done it now a couple of times. It's a great area, and the ability to really turn that into something special is, kind of at our feet here. So I just wanted to encourage the board to, keep that project in mind. It's a great project to really kind of introduce is probably the wrong word, but to bridge communities between us, Schenectady, and Scotia. And it's beautiful back there. Obviously, it needs work for anyone that's been back there, but the opportunities are having some time. And that's all, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Councilman Worzbowski.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I have a number of things to report on this evening. I wanted to let everybody know that the second traffic car is up and running at this point. Officers Ferretti and Agostino are working opposite shifts, and we have coverage pretty much every single day during the week, and some on the weekend as well. Their shifts are 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. I believe Officer Ferretti is on over the weekend. What this means to the residents is that not only are they focusing their attention on people who are not obeying traffic laws, but when complaints come in or issues come in and residents are concerned about specific trouble spots, it makes it so that these officers can respond and we can target areas that need to be targeted. I think this has long been an area that we have wanted to be able to help manage. I know myself as councilwoman for the last long time, 10 years or so, I've often had people say, I live over here and it would be great to see an officer in my neighborhood. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just not been possible. And I can understand when residents have concerns. So we'd like to congratulate Chief Janik for his leadership. I think that this is something that he has been talking about for a long time, and I'm glad to see that it's finally in place. I also wanted to point out he sent us his report this week for his number of incidents. And one thing that is of note, there was a large drop in traffic stops in the month of April, obviously due to COVID-19, and the officers kind of backed off on that. The courts were closed, and there's a number of different reasons why. But even with that large drop in the number of traffic stops, the number of incidents within the town has held fairly constant. So I find that to be very interesting, and it'll be something to look at going forward. in keeping with my report on police officers, you know, I know there's a lot of, there seems to be a lot of unrest. There seems to be a lot of concerns about police officers, and I just want to make sure that I say for myself, I know that our officers are very professional. They treat people with respect. They're people too. They live in our community. They want our community to be safe. They come to work every day, and you know, the tenor and the tone out there is one of mistrust, and I can understand why in certain instances there may be, but I think our officers go above and beyond, and I'm very proud of them all, and I want them to know that they have my support, you know, pretty much unilaterally. Chief Janik does a really good job of being a leader for them, and he sets an excellent role model, and I think that that's part of the reason why I think they do so well. Leadership starts at the top, and he sets a fabulous example for them. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. I attended the first meeting since January of the Traffic Safety Committee today. One item of note is the low bridges that we have within our town. So I learned something today. There's a number of reasons why bridges get hit, right? The drivers aren't paying attention, they aren't following a GPS, or they're following a GPS and they don't see the signs, they don't know how tall their truck is, they're not familiar with the area. There's a whole number of reasons. So Tom Melander has compiled a list of Glenville and surrounding towns of low bridges that are in danger of being struck. And one thing that came out of the meeting that I thought was interesting is, you know, we've kind of said, well, you know, they're not following the truckers' GPS system. Well, come to find out, in New York State, which is where they would probably get the data from, there's no master list of low-hanging bridges to put into a GPS system. So unfortunately, until something like that happens, you know, I think the bridges, unfortunately, are going to continue to be hit. I mean, I do think that, you know, we should press the state to, especially on Glen Ridge Road, because Officer Agostino was on the call today, and he was saying that the severity of the crashes is increasing, and they had a rollover accident a couple of weeks ago that, you know, could have been very serious, especially if somebody was following the truck closely enough where they couldn't stop in time. So, you know, I would just implore anybody who's driving a vehicle that's over the normal height to just be aware of how tall your vehicle is and pay attention, because, you know, that is part of the big part, probably the largest problem with people hitting the bridge, is that truck drivers either don't know or aren't paying attention to how tall their vehicles are. So, so they're working on putting that list together, and I believe they were going to be reaching out to Senator Disco and to Assemblywoman Walsh to see if they would be willing to sponsor some legislation that makes it a law that they have to have this list, and, you know, and go forward from there.
Great.
And the town chiefs had their meeting. I was not able to attend, but I do know that the COVID car is still going strong. And I think it's smart for them to keep it in place for now, because we just don't know what's going to happen. I know that it has greatly eased some of the staffing burdens that our local fire departments have, because they are all volunteer with the exception of Scotia Fire. So I'm glad to see that they're still continuing that. They have a high level of commitment to that. And lastly, this is somewhat Councilman Martin's bailiwick, but I would like to address some zoning things. So I got recently tagged on Facebook in a post with a resident who was having an issue with getting a permit for their pool. And I won't go into the details, but the long story short is, if you are thinking of doing anything on your property, especially a fence, a pool, a shed, an addition, any sort of modification to your property, you need to at least, you may not need a permit, but you need to check with the town before you do anything else, because the vast majority of the comments, it seemed like perhaps homework was not completely done. And I felt terrible telling the resident that was having the issue that, I'm sorry, but this is the process and this is the way it goes. And, you know, I would just point out to the residents that we follow the New York State codes, and we cannot change them except to make them more restrictive. And I'm pretty sure nobody wants us to do that. So just as a reminder, you know, if you're any of the things I've listed or anything at all with your property, just reach out to our building department. I'm more than happy to answer questions. They do a good job trying to help residents and guide them and give them pointers and tips. They're not trying to just make you, pay more fees. The code is the code. And when there's restrictions, you have to either follow them or apply for a variance. And that's the way it is. So, before you put deposit down on pools and things like that, I just urge residents to please do your homework. It will avoid a lot of headaches and heartaches for you going forward. You'll know what the process is, and it'll be a much smoother navigation for you interacting with our town.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Martin.
Oh, yeah, just a couple things I want to reiterate, reiterate Mike's comments on the parade through Outlaws and Woodhaven and so forth. It was a wonderful day. There was a lot of folks out. It was a lot of fun. And it was good in this day and age to see people celebrating the 4th of July and the great country that we have here. On a more technical level, I did attend a meeting a couple weeks ago of the Planning and Economic Development staff, their weekly meeting. Just got briefed on, various things that they do each and every week in terms of code violations out there in the town, planning board agendas, zoning board agendas. Everything's, I think working very well. And Melissa's here tonight, and she's really filling into the role. And so it was good to see everybody and start attending those again. I'm going to start doing those on at least quarterly, if not more often basis, just to keep track of what's going on there. And on the zoning revision committee front, you're going to see a number of things both tonight and forthcoming in August of the work being done there. And again, thanks to Melissa and Mike Burns. They've really taken this and run with it. And there's some good, well-needed changes coming that I think are going to certainly bolster, the land use pattern here in the town, the land uses we find, certainly promote economic development while keeping things looking neat and orderly and in line with what people want to see as reflected in our comprehensive plan. So there'll be a lot of things coming out on that in the code here in the forthcoming weeks. And then lastly, I just want to again say I appreciate and support our police department. I think they're doing a fine job. And as I said before, everybody yearns to have community policing where we already have it here. And it's wonderful to see. And I'm very proud of the men and women that serve in that department.
Thank you. Councilman Aragosa.
Yeah, a couple things. As we know, since our last meeting, we did have a water restriction that was put into place. I did, after hearing about that, do some investigating as to why Glenville needed to jump on the board on that as quickly as they did. One of the things I found out from some of the local geologists was because our wellheads are so far up the river as opposed to Niskuna and Schenectady and some of the other neighboring areas, we do get affected more by the lower water levels. That being said, there was some talk in the past of additional storage or an additional well farther down that maybe we should explore to try to consider those ideas to keep that from happening again. That's just a couple thoughts on that. As far as the parade, it was a great time, and I want to thank the police department for their efforts in keeping the traffic and helping the parade go smoothly as it did. Chief Janik, Officer Ferretti, and Agostino were both there that day, and traffic really was good, and thank them for that. There was something else that I was thinking about, and I lost it, so maybe I'll come back to it as business. But thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to add to the water restriction issue, although it is true that we are closer or further. The real issue that we had was the multiplier effect that we have a number of outside users.
Yeah.
And so the amount of usage that was going on outside the town also impacted us. Right. Other communities don't have the outside users. But that just was another factor.
It's a good thing for us.
Good thing for us. We're making money when the sun was shining.
Well, and the question of that I would have to back about that is, do we need to consider producing more volume for the time when we, for those times. And maybe if we do consider producing more volume, maybe we can find more outside users
Right.
and make more revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're through town council reports. I did neglect to let folks know before we started that we do have an add-on. The agenda was put out electronically, so you should have it, but there is an add-on which will go on after item 26. The add-on is resolution add-on 1, and it's a resolution accepting the bids for our annual paving program this year. And we'll get into that in just a few moments. Well, it's after item 26, so maybe more than a few moments. We'll move on now to privilege of the floor, which we do have, it looks like 4 folks on. If anyone's interested in speaking at privilege of the floor, you can, I see a hand is raised, so hold on just a moment. Okay, Susan, it looks like you are unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Susan, we can
Can you
hear
hear
you.
me?
This works good.
Oh,
We can hear
great.
you.
I didn't know if the technology would work. I haven't done this before with your meetings. So, hi. I guess the protocol is that I say I'm Susan Booth Binzik. I live at 391 Green Corners Road. So, as I said, I haven't attended the meetings electronically before, but I saw that there were a couple of changes to the town code up for public hearing and for vote today. So I thought I'd register and see what was going on. And I was not too surprised, but disappointed that there's no, the proposed changes are not posted on the website, that I did not get them in an email after I registered. One would assume that people who are interested in attending the meeting might be interested in commenting or at least knowing what's going to be voted on, and we really have no way to do that since we can't be there to pick up handouts, and even that isn't very satisfactory since you're learning everything at the last minute and you don't really have time to think about it. So I don't understand why people aren't provided with information on what's being decided that affects our daily lives, and why we aren't given the opportunity to really give informed input on these things.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else wish to be heard at privilege of the floor? Anyone else, just raise your hand. Seeing no other hands. Oh, the computer wants to update, but we're going to say not now. Hang on. We'll put you off for 4 hours and we postpone. Okay. Seeing no other hands, we will close privilege of the floor. And now we'll move to the next item, which is unveiling, very exciting, unveiling the town flag. So we do have a resolution later in the meeting to adopt the town flag. As many of you know, we've talked about doing different 2020 events, and as we had to cancel many of the 2020 events, we did other things to try to engage the residents. And so we asked the designer to come up with the flags. You all voted on the flags. I voted on the flag. And they came up with 6 options for us, and it kind of got some good traction. We had like, I think over 500 votes, which was pretty good for us. We don't normally garner that kind of. So we did, it was close. It was close. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's hope this technology works. I'll share my screen with folks. If you hold on just a moment, you will see the new town flag. And the new town flag, can you all see it? Tell me, Jason, if you can see it, because it's really exciting if you can. If it's not, it doesn't quite have the same effect. Yes, you can see it. Excellent. So the flag is the blue with the white stripe behind it, that one, and it has the town logo in the middle of it. You guys can all see the screen. But what was interesting was the amount of votes we had. So it won with 94 votes, The next closest were tied for 90 votes, the blue and the green solid. The red was a dog, that was 46 votes, that didn't get a lot of votes. The white was just behind it with 49 votes, and then the green striped one got 84 votes. So we break down the votes for folks here, and we'll have this online so people can see. But by just 4 votes, the flag won, the striped flag. So we're excited about that. We're going to work with the flag manufacturer to allow for, let me get out of this, folks. We're going to work with the manufacturer to make the flags for not just us, but also if you're interested, there'll be pre-orders if you want to buy like a garden flag or a small flag for your house or something. So we'll have that available for you folks as well. And we will be doing a flag raising later in the year, and we'll have some information on that. But this flag will fly with the American flag and the state flag over all of our properties across town, in our parks, and our buildings. So we'll forever, from now on, have a town flag, which I think is kind of cool. So thank you to all the residents for voting. We had phone calls, we had people stopping in, we had all sorts of different votes coming in, email, and it was a close race. So,
I voted for the winner.
did you? I didn't. Isn't that funny?
I didn't.
Yeah. So that's that. We'll move on, and there'll be a resolution later adopting that officially, and we'll move on from that. And we're going to ask Councilman Martin to start a discussion on the zoning code amendment recommendations, and these are in relation to all the public hearings that we're going to be calling for August. And also, I think, Jim, if you
have a
can,
couple of enactments
tonight, if you could touch on those.
Okay, so actually, by my count, Melissa, we have a series of 8 changes being made. These were summarized in a memo from Melissa to the Planning and Zoning Commission. First of all, on definitions, there were several things in there that required cleanup and clarification, and they're ranging from, let's see here, items from food vending business, things of that nature, really just cleanup of language on various words and terminologies that are used in the code, and clarifications, trying to make things more clear and concise. And I want to thank the staff for going through these with such the diligence they did. I think there's some good changes here. They're really too numerous to go through one by one. There's like 3.5 pages of them, but it was just in the spirit of making the definitions more tight and concise. Districts and boundaries, this is a minor change. We're updating the section that where we added the Freeman's Bridge Road corridor district to that list. So that'll be formally added to our list of districts in the code. Guidelines, we did a lot of work on guidelines. I know for the Freeman's Bridge Road corridor in terms of design guidelines, trying to standardize them across the commercial. And I think this is really some cleanup here too, that there was basically a clerical error in somehow things were numbered. So we're cleaning that up as well. Fees, we are going to be discussing fees. I don't think that's on anything that's before us now, but in the interest of finding, revenue wherever we can, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor for this board to consider the fee schedule. Melissa's gone out and done an analysis of like towns in the region to draw comparisons to those schedules and hours and see where things are out of alignment. And the other influence on this is the amount of time that staff has to spend in reviewing some of these applications, going through some of these processes and procedures. It does take time. The fees are never intended to pay for the entire cost, but it is intended to be an offset, against those costs. And that's a wider discussion we can have, but I do think it's time to bring our fees into alignment, number one, based on our needs and the time spent, on administering these procedures, and also to bring us in alignment with other like towns in the area.
Jim, just on the fees, I've asked department heads, because this is true for our parks department, it's true for every department, we'll be putting that into the budget discussion. So we'll be addressing town-wide the entire fee structure in our budget process.
Okay, and I'm just talking about in terms of the, building and zoning review procedures, that'll be the part of the fee schedule that we've been looking at, obviously.
Yes.
Now, in terms of signs, the sign code is being unified into one section of the code that will be universally applied to all districts in the town. Right now, it's reversed. The sign regulations are split up and they're fractured among many different sections of the code. It makes it difficult to administer. And if you have a changeover in staff over the course of years, things can get lost. So it's going to be centralized and also at the same time simplified. That's not on for tonight. I think that's a public hearing scheduled for August 19th. As part of that set of the changes. And again, this is, some needed changes in the sign code. The principal thing there, as I understand it, is, and this is something, that maybe we want to have a wider discussion on, is the elimination of the changeable copy LED signs as an allowed sign in the town. It was I think the consensus of the group, the committee, that we eliminate the changeable copy as an allowed sign, form of sign in the town. It is allowed only in certain areas of the town right now in certain instances, and we do have some, and our experience with them is quite frankly not been good. It's difficult to regulate, and it varies widely on the quality of the sign, the technology that's used, the components of the sign. If you can have signs out there that are very and even to the point of being a danger to the traveling public. The ever-changing technology, I think it's something that we just want to decide to move away from and prohibit them. So that's a major change, and I look forward to further discussion on that. I'm just sharing with you the opinion that's been brought forth from staff and the committee and myself to this point, but it's certainly subject to wider discussion by this board before we enact anything. 5G is coming, and it's going to be a change in the landscape in the communities as it goes through, because as I understand it, basically speaking, 4G, if you can envision a large antenna that broadcasts or transmits to streetscape, and it's going to be antenna to antenna contact in order to transmit the signal. It's not a signal that can go through a building, it can't go around a corner, so there has to be line of sight between 5G and antennas. And the federal government, in anticipation of the rollout of this technology, has really hamstrung the local regulation of this new technology. They've mandated through the FCC the review time that can be taken, whether it be a replacement antenna or a new antenna. And it's also mandated if it is located on a town right of way, and we want to get, so to speak, rent or payment for use of property in our right of way, they limit the amount of money that can be charged for that use. This is going to be a change. I mean, everybody's anxious to have 5G, but you're going to see these poles and antenna everywhere. Even on your so-called local roads, side roads, neighborhood streets, these are going to be present in order to transmit this signal. So it's going to be I think a noticeable change in the landscape, and we're just trying to get, to the extent we can regulate this use. We're trying to get out in front of this before it becomes so prevalent. Stormwater, I'm not a stormwater person, and if people have detailed questions, I will defer this to Melissa because she did the actual wording and the changes here. But as I'll try and summarize it as best I can. The regulation of stormwater has always come from the state down to the local municipalities. It's basically a classic unfunded mandate. The communities that do this regulation, participate in this, are called MS4 communities, and we're one of them. And so we're responsible for the regulation of stormwater within our boundary. And as we heard from Tom Capola several weeks ago, he's our stormwater officer. He provides an annual report. He's required to do that. The MS4 records of the town are audited by DEC for compliance. And DEC, I think, just several years ago, once again, updated and further detailed their regulations. And basically speaking, we're trying to fall in line with what the state did. Is that a fair statement, Melissa? And if you look at the changes that are proposed, it's kind of technical in nature, and that's reflective of our code falling into line with what's being required in the state code, and we're catching up to that. So from that standpoint, it's a positive thing. It's something that needs to be done. Again, I don't want to get into a lot of detail into the weeds here, but that's a quick summary of what's being done there. The same holds true with grading. This is part and parcel to stormwater. Grading is an important part of that. Again, these are more minor in nature, but again, we're bringing ourselves into line with what's required in the state regulation. So that's a very brief summary of what's being done. In deference to the comment made during the privilege of the floor, I appreciate what was said there, and we'll do our best. Melissa, I think if we can get these on the website for the August meetings, the changes that are being done, I'd like to see that happen. I apologize for that. But again, I think residents should be confident in knowing that we're trying to make changes that are, in terms of local codes, things that are called for in our comprehensive plan, input we've received from our staff who work with these regulations each and every day, and input we've received, whether it's informally from residents or in our day-to-day contact with residents. That's been the motivation behind making these changes. So I don't think you'll find anything here, offensive or anything like that. It's just some basic cleanup. But I would always welcome anybody who has questions or comments. This is an open process. And I welcome any comments on this stuff because we're just trying to fall in line with what the expectations of the residents are.
Thank you, Jim. And I appreciate that. And we could always do better. There's a tremendous amount of information here at the town, and putting that out on the web isn't always something that we can get to easily or quickly based on our staffing. We have very limited, but we could always do better, and we will always try to do better. But a resident ought to understand, and the resident ought to have the responsibility as well to reach out, and anytime they have a question, we have a very responsive staff here, and we handle a lot of calls and a lot of emails and a lot of requests for information. It's always available, and we'll do a better job trying to get a lot of this on the website as much as we can. But it certainly is there is an opportunity to address the staff on these, or myself or any one of you. Please reach out and ask questions if you really have a question on something.
And I would also note that we did schedule this public hearing at last month's meeting, so there's been a full month of time to review these in anticipation of the hearing tonight.
Correct. Any questions or comments for Councilman Martin, or any discussion before? These will be discussed as we go through the actual, although the resolutions we're calling a public hearing for in August will not be discussed in length, but the two tonight that will pass will be, and I'll ask Melissa to give an overview when we get to those. But any questions or comments for Councilman Martin on any of this?
Just one comment on LED signs, and something that, being on the zoning revision committee for 2 years, along with Jim, and listening to Jim and learning from some of Jim's expertise. Something that he pointed out that when he said it, I occurred to me in my mind, but there are a number of communities that have already banned them. Queensbury, for one, who has a huge commercial corridor, doesn't have any LED signs. And when you do get into the issues of uniformity and enforcement, it really does become, not to tip my hat where I'm leaning for public hearing, but it does become a real boondoggle trying to deal with them. So I would just commend Jim for his work and for offering up his expertise to the board on the subject. And I certainly learned from him when I was on the zoning revision committee. So particularly on that issue, and that was a fact that stood out in my mind.
Well, I miss Mike calling me, when are we gonna have the next meeting? God, I want to go.
You don't
Pretty
get those
dry
calls.
stuff sometimes, but,
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll talk more about that as we get into the public hearing, but before the public hearing, I do have supervisors' comments to the board. And I'll stay here again in spirit of, usually I go to the podium, but since we've been close to the public, I'll deliver it from here. I know sometimes it feels far away, but I want to just take a few moments. We have budget amendments here tonight, and we'll talk about that resolution when we get into it. Some of it has to do with the typical biannual budget amendments we do, but there's going to be some discussion on where we are right now with some of our revenue issues. But our tax cap has been confirmed and locked in for 2021. It's not good news. It's 1.56%, which is not where we were prior to COVID. So we certainly have had an impact there. This has allowed us a levy increase in 2021 to be $147,000, which is not a lot of growth there. I remind folks, we still have to honor our Fire District 4 contract where we made an agreement for 2%. But this is exactly why we tried to hold the line on that. And when we made that agreement for 2%, it was a good agreement prior to COVID. But these are things we have to think about as we go through the budget this year. We're definitely going to have some challenges in 2021 based on the cap. We offset an expected reduction of 2021 Metroplex sales tax revenue due to the pandemic. Tonight's budget amendment, you'll see, and we'll talk about it, includes a reduction of $160,000 so far in 2020 of Metroplex sales tax to the town. This reduction is it may get worse before the end of the year. So this is only a mid-year adjustment. We budget against uncertainty in the housing market, which could negatively affect our mortgage tax. And tonight we'll see a reduction in revenue of $40,000 in our mortgage tax revenue. We will absorb our normal, in the 2021 budget, our normal health insurance increases. We have a little bit of good news on that front. Our two largest carriers have requested lower than average premiums. We usually have about double-digit increases. We're going to look at about 5% increase on our health insurance, which is among the lowest we've seen in some time. But that still adds $100,000 to our budget. Remember, our cap's $147,000. So we now have $47,000 to work with after we absorb the health insurance increase. We're still in the dark concerning state aid, and as we get to the add-on for our paving plan this year, we'll talk about that, but we do not know what reduction we're going to take. I think it's becoming a little bit clear that we're going to take some reduction, but we don't know when and we don't know what. My fear is that we're going to take a reduction in December after we've been through our spending year, and we would have had to make all of our decisions prior to the end of the year. So I'm hoping the governor doesn't do that. I'm hoping the governor comes out clearly and gives municipalities the guidance that we need to make adjustments now, not at the end of the year when it's too late. And paving is one example of that. We also have 3 union contracts, which combined includes a 2021 salary and benefit increase of $120,000. So if you're doing the tally in your head as we're going through this quickly, we're already at $220,000 against a $147,000 cap. That's a problem. That's a big challenge. So those are some of the issues we're going to be facing in 2021. I will release my budget memo to the department heads by the end of July, which I do annually. We'll work with them very closely. And as you know, I'll have a tentative budget to you by September 30th. But I'm hoping we'll have more clarity on the budget issues by then. Hopefully, it will be very helpful for the governor to have all his, what he's going to do with revenue before the tentative budget. That would be very helpful. A few other things to talk about non-financial. I also want to congratulate All Applause for a great, and Woodhaven, by the way, now that was part of it, a great parade. It was a great day, and it was great to see everybody out on the front lawn, and we did a great job with that. I've met with the history committee, and it pains me to say that we're unfortunately, and we have another victim to the COVID, but Thursdays in the Park will have to be canceled. We made a decision last month to go forward with it, and we reevaluated some of the issues that we're facing, and it just, we just can't do it. The bigger disappointment, and although we haven't announced it yet, is Oktoberfest will also be canceled this year. There's no way we can manage nearly 10,000 people in this environment, and it just got to a point where we just can't do it, and that's sad. But the opportunity here is next year we're coming back stronger, better, and I think we're going to have a lot of folks coming out supporting these events as soon as we can get back to it. As I told you before, because we've had to cancel a lot, we're trying to do things differently for the bicentennial. The committee and I were here on Saturday selling T-shirts, and we had a good turnout. We sold about $400 worth of merchandise, so we had people stopping by. It was pretty steady, which was nice, and just people excited to get T-shirts and coins and things like that. So if you don't have your T-shirts yet, get them, because it's nice to have as a memory of the great pandemic of 2020. We'll be talking a little bit probably in August. We're looking at rebidding the Melwick bids for the 3 different phases, and we're going to break those out into 3 different phases. As Councilman Godlewski alluded to, grant money, we're still having issues with grant money flowing, so we're looking at things very closely and on a case by case, and if we can break that bigger project out into 3 smaller projects and make decisions on each of those, it may end up being 3, it may end up being 2, maybe 1 or none. But we've worked with Rotary and Kiwanis and the service organizations, and it looks like the playground is going to be pretty much largely funded by these service organizations. So that's good news. But where the concession stand comes in and the pavilion with electric, we'll just have to evaluate these as these come in, and maybe we could do part of it, but not all of it this year like we originally planned. Same holds true for Yates. We awarded the bid, as you know, last week for Yates. The back west wing is now gone, so the last part of the non-historic piece of that building is gone, thankfully, and the windows are on order, so we'll have new windows in that building hopefully within the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's going to make a major impact on the visual impact of the building. We're excited about that. And then what I could foresee for additional work there this year is potentially the repainting, the soffit work, all external work, so there's a visual for the folks to see, and it looks from the outside done. The inside is another story, and that's a 2021 or 2022 discussion at this time. I want to thank folks. I know Vicky worked hard on it as well. The tennis court is refurbished. The basketball court's refurbished. The second court, tennis court's getting done. They look great. We already have folks that want to rent out the basketball courts for clinics, and so we're getting a lot of attention around these courts. So thank you for all your hard work on that. I've had my second meeting since we last met with the veterans, the legacy group that is looking to put their project in what will be our new park on Dutch Meadows. I don't have any news yet on Dutch Meadows going forward, but we're working on getting that land secure for the town, and I'm hoping that will happen before the fall, and then we'll continue to work with the veterans on how we set up an agreement for them to do what they want to do in our park. Well, I see it similar to working with our sports leagues, having the same kind of user agreement in place, where they'll work on their stuff, but it's in our park. But more to come on that. Been working with Melissa on getting a RFP out for engineering services for the Safe Way to Schools grant, which no news on it, right? I ask you every time I see any news on our grants, but no new news on that one. It's still where it is. Yeah. So the risk on that one is going to be, right now, the small risk will be if we do not get that grant, then we will not get reimbursed for the engineering study. But my thought is, let's keep this moving, because once that money does, if it does become available, and then we have to wait for the engineering study. Now we're into a whole nother year because, winter or whatever. So, well, we can, let's get the engineering study done and hope that money is free at some point. Court, just to give you an update on some operational stuff here, court is going to begin hearing cases on July 21st. Yeah, but they do have a lot of restrictions, as when we open, we'll have a lot of restrictions. So this room will be different. We'll be taking out probably 75% of the chairs. They can only really see 30 defendants a night. Folks are going to be in their 6 foot apart chairs and wait for their case to be called. And one of the issues we're going to have is we're going to have additional overtime costs, because we're going to need 2 police officers, 1 to watch the room and 1 to watch out in the hallway. So that's going to drive overtime. I have offered the court, since they are so backlogged and they can only take so many cases at a time, I've offered them the room that Wednesdays, when we're not meeting, they can hold court in here, so they'll have an additional night of court, which will affect work sessions. If we are back open and we do have a work session in August, they won't be able to use that night. But if we don't have anything in particular, then perhaps it'll be more efficient for them to use the room to try to move the case. We would need a resolution for that, which until we know if we have a work session. But we can, although work session, we don't need a resolution.
We don't need a resolution.
No, just the town board meetings.
We just need to put notice out to the public.
Yeah.
Of where it's going to be.
I'm sorry, I was thinking town board meetings. So if worst case scenario, we could do something somewhere else,
Yeah, we just have to put notice out.
which we were supposed to do, travel around on our work sessions anyway. Yeah. So that's where we are. We will be back open to the public as of August 8th, unless the governor, so we were supposed to be open July 6th, but the governor extended it to August 8th. So that puts us, our work session will be the 12th, and then our meeting will be the 19th. So we would be open to the public conceivably, unless he extends it. So as we sit here right now, we'll be open, but I don't know, it's been extended before. So that's all I have for comments. And so, and I know we'll talk more at the budget amendments. So we'll start with our public hearings at this juncture. So Melissa, I'm going to call on you to just explain the 2 public hearings, but I'm going to ask you to come up here and speak very loudly. You got to work with me however you want. Well, if you're 6 feet away, but I'm probably going to ask you to speak loudly so folks can hear you. Sure. You know what, Melissa, Earl's going to have you sit in his seat just for the explanation.
Is it because of the microphone?
Yes, but still loud.
Is this close enough and loud enough?
I think so.
Great. We had gone through with the, first with the stormwater legislation. There is a gap analysis on the DEC website. It really focuses only on minimum control measures 4 and 5, which has to do with construction site stormwater and post-construction site stormwater. And so the code updates that were required are ones that are in model local laws. They have one that passed in 2006, and they have a draft one dated 2016. And the purpose of those really is to kind of add a little color when you have a certain conditions, what types of SWIP responses are required. Those weren't laid out before in the model law in 2004, the first one that was put out by DEC. And now they've added that language, and they require municipalities that are MS4s to add that language in. And so we added in things like, what conditions, just disturbing a site, if there's any kind of some sensitive stream nearby, what types of things you have to do to control it. In a post-construction site, that you have to have certain green infrastructure practices or make a good effort to do it. And if you can't, you have to have a reason why you can't. And so the next one, the grading, actually flows from that, because anytime you disturb a site, of course, even if you're not doing a full development, say of a large multifamily or a commercial site, you're still creating a condition where sediment could go into a water body, a tributary, a river, a pond. And so the standards that we put in it is that if you are moving 30 cubic yards of fill and creating a different topography than what is there now, then you have the potential to be impacting how water is flowing, and it may go into one of our tributaries or sub-tributaries. And the other condition is if you're creating a 15% slope, obvious reasons, because the water would move a lot faster, pick up a lot of sediment, and the volume and quality of it both could impact negatively tributaries. So does that kind of wrap it up in a way that's
I think it does.
wonky?
I think it does.
Okay.
It's obvious that this is a fairly technical, both technical amendments to it. So I'm just trying to get our webcam back, folks. I don't know why the webcam keeps dropping, but maybe Earl and Melissa can change seats again
We have
when,
that problem.
yeah, it just
It
keeps
might be
dropping.
me.
I don't know. Mike has a question, Melissa.
Can I ask this simple question? Because we did have somewhat of an objection during the privilege before. Is there anything pending that would cause us not to put this back for a month? Is there a project out there that, this would affect, let's just table these resolutions for a month and get it on the website or get it out to that particular person who had a complaint and just keep everybody.
Well, we have to have the public hearings because they're scheduled. So the public
Well, the
hearings.
public hearing's happening right now.
No, well, we didn't open them yet, but yes.
Yeah, all right, but you haven't, but when we get to the actual voting on the resolution, is there something out there that, we need to actually do this month instead of next month?
We are abiding by the 2004 and mostly by the 2006. And every year, of course, we have to have a certification that we are complying with at least the 2006, but preferably the 2016. So I've been pushing for this for months for that reason, that we have to be in compliance, and I didn't want to fall out of compliance. We do our annual report in March, and we always have open SWIP.
I guess, and I understand the point. And if this were something, these are a set of laws that the common resident doesn't have a lot of contact with. These
This
are,
is highly technical
and it's construction-related activity.
in line with the state of New York's model law.
And I defer to the staff. If it's something you think you need, then I would like to move tonight. I understand the point, but if this were something that was of a nature where there's a high level of interface with residents, I'd be more sympathetic. But I just don't see the real need here, given the type of regulation that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay, so once Earl gets back, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishes to be heard on, we'll open up in 2 public hearings. Anyone wishes to be heard on them, raise their hand and I'll call upon you to be heard. So I'm going to open the first public hearing, and that's regarding the changes to Chapter 270-49, grading and site preparation regarding the codes of the town of Glenville. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Public hearing is now open. Going once, Going twice. Seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. The next public hearing we will open is in relation to stormwater management and erosion control, chapter 270-75 through 82.10 regarding the codes of the town of Glenville. That public hearing is now open. As it was discussed by our Director of Community Development, she did a good job laying out both of these. Anyone wish to be heard on this matter going forward? Again, this is regarding the stormwater management and erosion control. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, that public hearing is now closed. We'll move on to resolution 11 stating the records for the town justice court for the town of Glenville has been audited by the town of Glenville pursuant to the Uniform Justice Court Act. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
I
it.
have a second.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? This again is the audit that the town of Glenville does on our town justice court. And as you can see by the resolution, it really looks at all the records and docket for the town court, and no findings were called out or found in the audit. So this is accepting the audit that was performed by the town of Glenville on the town justice court for 2019. Other questions or comments?
Mr. Supervisor, I would just like to say thank you to our court clerks. They work really hard to make sure that the fines and different fees that they collect are accounted for. And I don't believe there has been, since I've been on this board, an incident where there has been an issue with their accounting of the monies that they receive and where they end up going, whether it be to the state or into our town funds. So I would just like to thank them for their efforts at being so diligent and so thorough.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Gollowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is a resolution approving the 2020 budget memos. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second, and amendments, I didn't finish the word, I'm sorry. Must be trying to move quickly. I do want to, there's a lot of stuff here, and as you know, and I know Jason is with us on the line here, so he can chime in, but we do this we used to do this years ago annually, and it got to be too much to do at the end of the year, and so now we do them biannual every 6 months, and we're at that point now where we need to do some amendments. I do want to call, and once I call these out, please feel free to ask any questions on anything you see that jumps out at you. But on the decrease of revenues under the A fund, town general, it's the second page. You'll see court fines 18,000 reduction, mortgage tax 40,000 reduction. These are unusual reductions for us because of the COVID. The court has not been open. These are where you're starting to see revenue drops now in our lines. Mortgage tax is down. Interesting that the housing market is fairly strong. It's just fewer homes are on the market. But the homes that are on the market are selling fairly quickly. Yeah.
I was actually, sorry to jump in, I was surprised about that, but it is exactly right. But the houses, I mean, they're going like in unprecedented times. I mean, maybe it'll indicate that we'll pick back up.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So that's the revenue drop you see in A. If you move to the B fund, the town outside, the decrease in revenues on the next page, sales tax by Metroplex were down $76,800. And some interest earnings, obviously, with what's happening out there. But so that's a reduction in the B fund. And then the highway fund, you're going to see on that same page, decrease in revenue, sales tax, Metroplex, 83,000. And that's a big chunk of our revenue drop there. So you're starting to see these things. I'm concerned by the end of the year, it's likely going to be worse than this. So the good news out of this tonight is we are not tapping any fund balance to deal with these revenue drops. We're able to do this with adjustments. I want to thank Jason. We've been working together on looking at adjustments where we can make them. And I'll give you one example of it in the highway fund. You'll see we're reducing rental equipment by $30,000 and machinery equipment by $45,000. That's basically a truck, 2 trucks that early on we talked about how we might not be able to buy all the vehicles we said we would. That's how we're helping to meet some of these drops at this point. Another example of that is in the A fund, employee social security, it's not as big, but dental vision benefits, we didn't hire our new park person that was in the budget. So that's how we're meeting some of these issues right now. I wanted to at least call those out to you so you can see some of the more unusual things. Those are not run-of-the-mill drops in revenue that you see annually or every 6 months. So anyone have any questions on anything else in there that you see or you have questions on? Some offsets, just to point this out before, the A Fund Senior Center Assistance Program, $24,000 went up as an appropriation, and then it decreased in the appropriations for that. And on the next page, that's the offset expense. That's the money we raised for our senior meal program. So it was raised and it's going out for that program. And that was not in the budget previously. Any questions or you see anything on there that's causing you some concern?
I'd just like to thank Jason for his efforts and the participating department heads in coming forth with some decreases that can help offset this or at least agreeing to them. So kind of a team effort here and it's much appreciated.
Let me just say for the residents that, this is a time where we're going to have to really look at all these things and see changes that we're not used to. If we're not used to them, and Chris isn't used to them, and Jason's not used to them, the residents are going to be fairly shocked by some of the things that they see going forward in the next year. This doesn't bother. I see it every day in my own business, things that you used to do as a normal course of business just don't happen the way they used to.
That's right. Anything else? Jason, you have anything to add?
No, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Please call the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution authorizing the supervisor to file an application regarding 10,000 trees and growing. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. And so this is a program we've been involved in before, but it helps us attain some grant money regarding a program called 10,000 Trees and Growing, I believe through Grid. National Grid does this. And I don't know if our 200 trees that we did this year, they don't qualify. All right, but we're planting a lot of trees in the town of Glenville, and that's another good story here coming out of this bicentennial. So this will allow us to apply for that grant and help offset the cost of new trees. Any questions or comments?
There are, at the beginning at Trailhead, where you have set it, pretty much there are new trees there.
Those are the bicentennial trees.
That's fantastic.
They're all over. Actually, you can find them. We should do like a little hunt one day and ask people to go find them because they're in all the parks. They're at Yates. They're here. They're at the Senior Center, History Center. Be kind of cool, but I don't think any of them died yet. I have one in my yard. It's alive. It's doing well.
That's something would help,
Are you-
right?
Are you saying if you can keep a tree alive?
Yeah, it should be good.
He's private.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is the local law number 7, adopting the chapter 27049 grading site preparations that we just had a public hearing on and discussion by both Councilman Martin and Melissa Terrabino. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, just quickly, this is a resolution amending chapter 270, section 49, grading and site preparation. I think we've discussed this quite a bit and provided some description of what's going on here based on what Melissa has informed us of. So I think we're we have a good and accurate description of what's being proposed here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa? Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is enacting local law number 8 of 2020 regarding the stormwater management and erosion control, which is chapter 270, 75 through 82.10 regarding the code of Glenville. And we did have a public hearing on this tonight, and we did have a description both by Councilman Martin and Melissa Cherubino. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, again, this is an enactment of amendments to our Article 11 of Chapter 270, Stormwater Management, Erosion, and Sediment Control, as previously discussed.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa? Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, the resolution passes. The next series of resolutions are public hearings that we'll be setting for August 19th. So the first one is a resolution setting public hearing for August 19th regarding the proposed amendments to supplemental regulations, section 270-46 regarding the personal wireless service facilities to chapter 270 zoning of the code of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. And this is, and Jim, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but this is the 5G that you had mentioned earlier. I just want to point out that Earl and I have both been in contact with Verizon. Actually, Attorney Cuevas and I started the conversation last year with Verizon on this. You're absolutely right. There's going to be a whole bunch of little boxes around everyone's town to support the 5G. And we are working with Verizon on a user agreement or some sort of agreement.
It's a user agreement.
Yeah.
We're negotiating with them at the current time.
And we are limited to, the FCC has preempted us on a lot of issues, so we are limited, but Earl and I are working with them. So this would allow for us to make the needed change and highly technical changes, again, I would say, to the code in order to accommodate the 5G wave that's coming.
And not to say all is lost. I mean, there is a review procedure provided for them. So there is opportunity for public notification, of a series of polls coming into the community. So there will be opportunity for review and public input by virtue of this. And
there is an opportunity for revenue. I'd like to do an analysis on that because one of the things I'm concerned about, and it may not be necessarily today, although I think we're seeing the erosion already, but our cable franchise fees are going to continue to drop. People are cutting that cord at amazing rates, and it's only speeding up, and 5G is going to make it go even faster. That's going to be a big revenue hit to us. And so I don't know if 5G is going to make that up for us in the revenue we're able to collect on the rents for on these poles, but we should do an analysis on that, Jason, for this budget, because we're seeing an erosion in that line, and I think we're going to continue to see an erosion in that line.
So it's very modest, but it's something.
Yeah, it's not as modest as, I mean, the fee.
Yeah.
The fee that we get is modest, yes. And so my point is, I don't think it's going to replace the cable franchise fee. Any questions or comments on that?
Just to say that we could get these up on the.
Yes.
We don't do it again.
We did ask Melissa that.
Thank you. I won't say that again.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is scheduling a public hearing on the same night, August 19th, regarding section 270-3 definitions of the zoning code, chapter 270. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. I think Councilman Martin had told us what this is about already. If anyone has any questions, now's the time.
Yeah, and the specific terms that are being revised are attached to the resolution and will be a forthcoming posting on the website will occur, but they are there itemized for you to look at.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 18, scheduling a public hearing on August 19th regarding amendments to section 270-10 through 13, known as district and boundaries to the chapter 270 zoning code of the town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. And again, Councilman Martin gave us an overview. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is very minor, just inserting the Freeman's Bridge Road district into our list of zoning districts.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, 2019, sorry, trying to get through it. Calling a public hearing for Wednesday, August 19th regarding commercial development design guidelines, section 270-133 through 138.1 for the code of the town of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do
it.
I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Again, discussed earlier, but Jim, just a quick overview.
Yeah, this is inserting some design guidelines for primarily commercial development to follow that goes into our commercial corridors and districts. This was the last piece of work, by the way, that the committee worked on when we had a consultant assisting us. So there are some illustrations provided that they worked up to help give a visual interpretation of what's being regulated. And it's some good stuff. And I think over the course of years, the residents will notice a gradual but steady improvement, hopefully, in the aesthetic appearance of our commercial districts.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 20, calling a public hearing on August 19th to hear all persons interested in sign control, section 270-66 through 72 of, to the chapter of 270 of the code of Glenville. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
I have a second.
Second.
Moved in second and discussed earlier. And again, Jim, just a quick.
Yeah, quick summary. This will be consolidating our sign regulations for users of signs, primarily again commercial businesses, but there are those instances where there are some residential signs or in residential areas out there. This will consolidate those regulations into one location, and we are updating the language here. Again, it's attached to the resolution, and we will be posting this as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 21, authorizing the rental of Melwick Park for Burnt Hills Youth Field Hockey to hold their skills camp August 10th through 13th. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. I pretty much just said it all. Any questions or comments? This
Nice
will,
to see them coming back.
yeah, this will help benefit youth sports leagues in our community, and I'm glad our parks are getting utilized again. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Worzbowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, adopting the town of Glenville's official flag. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. This is kind of a neat little exciting resolution because it's kind of going to be part of our history now. You folks will hopefully vote in favor of our new town flag. To help celebrate our bicentennial, the town desires to adopt an official town flag. And we had several proposed flag designs, options A through F. We did go out to the residents for a vote. Apparently, the only board member who voted for this one is Jim Martin, so we'll forever call this the Martin flag going forward. We had 453 votes to be exact, and with 94 votes, design E received the majority of votes. So we're asking the town board to honor that. You're like electors in the electoral college. You have to, you can't be rogue.
We can usurp the will of the people, right?
You have to go with what your folks voted for. So you see attached to it is the flag. We showed it earlier. We also put here the results of the vote. And I know we're saving money. And like I say, we'll look to have a flag raising. flag raising ceremony before, or hopefully Labor Day. See how quick the manufacturer can get it done. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godzewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. I thought at least someone would vote no, so they could say, I voted against that flag. That's could be your claim to fame 50 years from now.
I already voted against it, but in the interest of solidarity,
Next, resolution 23, adopting the building energy benchmarking policy procedures. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Another exciting, highly technical resolution. Yeah.
Jim's in his glory right now.
So Jim, tell us about this one.
Well, this is yet another a change in code, I believe. This is in regards to building energy benchmarking policies and procedures. So I don't know. I don't know how much more I can say.
Do you want to give a shorthand on that, Melissa? I can, whatever you say, I'll repeat.
We have the opportunity to become a community, so we'd be eligible for grant funding, and we have to do 4 high
Right.
action items. We've done 2. This would be a third. We've already started it using interns, and then the 4th person would be training our code officers on energy.
So what exactly does it do?
It's basically your measuring the baseline first of what our energy usage is, tracking that over time to make sure that you have, you know, you can understand how much energy you're using, and then if you install some sort of method of reduced energy usage, you're going to see that measurably.
It's basically a
Portfolio management.
tracking procedure so you can track your smart energy
Yeah.
practice.
So I know folks can't hear Melissa from the back of the room, so I'll repeat it in a Reader Digest format. To become a climate smart community, we have to do high impact action items. We've done 2 of 4. This will be the 3rd. And this will allow us to go ahead and measure our energy usage and record our benefit of reducing our energy
Consumption.
consumption.
Smart energy practice.
Does that say it all? Does that say everything? All right, that's perfect. Any questions or comments?
I just want to thank Melissa. She's done a lot of work on this stuff and
Yes.
she's advancing a lot of stuff that's been in the bottleneck here for months.
Even before Melissa was here, the Glenville Environmental Conservation Commission put a lot of work into this effort. For becoming an energy smart community.
Yep.
This is part of keeping that going. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to them.
Sorry. And just to add, a lot of this, as was noted, a lot of this about grant funding. So, you know, translation, free money is out there, like, let's do what we can to abide by the terms and to get it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fantastic.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa? Councilman Godzewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 24, approving the town board minutes for May 20th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just to note that this was before the board at the last meeting back in June. I noted some objections at the time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
No,
Councilman Godzewski?
No.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 25, approving the town board minutes for June 17th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, this resolution would approve the minutes from our previous meeting, the 17th meeting. The minutes are prepared by Ms. Neal and our staff, and distributed to the board members through email. I would thank her for her time and effort in the minutes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godzewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
I was absent and will not be voting.
And Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 26, approving the monthly departmental reports for June 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, any discussion?
Just always, thanks to the department heads for these reports. They're always very much appreciated.
We couldn't hear you with your mask on, see, sorry.
Uh,
Because I knew you were gonna, do you have anything you want to say?
Same thing that Jim said.
Okay,
Ditto.
ditto. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution will be the add-on resolution 1. Do I have this is the add-on resolution adopting our paving plan for 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. You'll figure out who that was, Linda. This is, I just want to advance this. I just want to talk a little bit about where we are with this because it's a little tricky. We did do a bid for 3 locations and we did reserve the right in the bid to take only some, a portion of that, as you see here in the resolution. By doing this now, there's a few benefits. One certainly is we're getting a pretty good rate. We haven't seen this kind of rate in a long time, and that could be the positive in all of this. But we are taking a little bit of a risk, and one of the risks is that we don't know if CHIPS is going to be there or not by the end of the year, or any portion of the CHIPS that may be taken back. My rule of thumb is I'm expecting about a 20%. So our annual allocation of CHIPS is typically $216,000, and then we put our winter recovery in and our Pave New York money, which is $37,000 and $45,000 respectively. So that's about $298,000. So that gets us all of the rest of Woodhaven pretty much done with a little left over. If we take our 20% cut on that, so that's $298,000. Let's just call it $60,000 as a round number. If we are risking, so the board understands this, we are risking a $60,000 best case estimate we believe may happen is risking $60,000. Would have to come out of capital funds at that point. We would have to tap capital funds to pay that. Now we are already, as you know, in the last budget, tapping our capital funds in highway to the tune of $150,000 to do Scotch Bush area, and that will finally get Scotch Bush done. We did that prior to COVID. We did that because we protected our fund balance. This is what we use our fund balance for, capital improvements, and so it was a prudent decision at that time. We will be going out on a limb here and using $150,000 out of capital. That's what you'll be voting for, just so you know, allocating that out of capital reserves. That came in at 128,000, so we're below. Right.
$20,000 back to $60,000.
Right, so we're below, and we're also below, if we do get all of our CHIPS, we're also below in Woodhaven, so it'd be even less coming out of fund balance. But there will be an allocation of 6 figures out of capital reserves. Potentially more if we lose. Now, the real gamble is if we lose CHIPS altogether, then we're in trouble. But at this juncture, we believe we've got to pave when we have to pave. We can't wait until the end of the year or nothing will get done this year. So that's what you're voting on, just so we're clear. There is a risk that revenue may not materialize.
Just going on to the third part of it, the idea that we're not going to take on the extra 250,000 is something that we would have probably done if it wasn't for all of this event.
Potentially, I mean, that would have been a stretch, even under good circumstances, because that would have been a lot out of the reserves. But we're trying to,
See where
if we can get under.
It's not a bad idea to put it out there at the time when you think you're going to
Right.
come back with lower numbers.
Right.
That makes sense.
But it's not without a risk. So I just want to be clear. Everybody understands. CHIPS money none of this money has been delivered to the town of Glenville yet.
Well, I think, just as a comment, the lane and that Yolanda Scotch Bush area, they've been waiting for this a long time, and I think it resonates quite well with the residents. So
What I will.
And I know Tommy and his crew have been doing work in that area to get ready for this. So they are ready.
What I'll also say make the board, I hope, feel better, is that we did already borrow for the Indian Meadows internal road, which is about $250,000, which is kind of what we're talking about here. And that project's pretty much already off the charts. We're not going to do that anyway. So my hope is that we're able to just put that back, not take that money, pay off that ban. But in worst case scenario, we have that at least that would cover, which we're already kind of in our budget baked in. So there's ways of dealing with it. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Supervisor, I would just like to take a moment and thank Commissioner Capola and his staff and you and Jason for looking at this and finding a way for the neighborhood in the Scottsbush area. Since I've been on the board, they've been asking for this, and I know that we had said tentatively next year, and I'm pleased that that although some of the holes in the Swiss cheese lining up aren't the most favorable, I understand there's a risk. But I think that it's important to take a risk like this because I think it will have a direct positive impact on their quality of life. And that's important in these, especially in the times we're in now. Everybody's lives are upside down and nobody knows what's going to happen. And, something is what may seem to some people as small as paving a road, I think is going to be something that hopefully will positively impact them going forward.
And as we do these, we're able to get to the hill roads all that much quicker next year, as
Yeah.
opposed to 3 years out or whatever.
I mean, honestly, it's, I think pretty much the writing's on the wall and the state government and our governor's probably going to let the municipalities twist this year. They're probably going to cut our funding and everybody's going to have to feel the pain. We have a $13 billion budget and deficit. And if we receive even 60% of our CHIPS money, I would be astonished at this point. I just have zero faith that we're going to see those monies. So that said, I'm still comfortable with this because this is an investment that has to be made. It has to be made. I remember years ago when we sat at that work session and we had the analysis of our roads and they were graded and just, at that very moment, it became very clear that this is an investment that we have to sometimes suck it up and make. It's just the way it is.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa? Councilman Goddusky?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski? Yes. Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. We're on to new business. I'll start on my left with Councilwoman Wozzachowski. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Councilman Goddusky. Go this way.
Just, as a refrain that people are repeating over and over again, remember to wear your mask. Wear your mask when you're out in public, wear your mask when you're at the grocery store. I know it's less than ideal, but as we've kind of noted over and over again, tonight, everyone's in less than ideal times and circumstances. So it might not be, necessarily your life you're saving, but it could be somebody else's. And science certainly suggests that it helps. So please wear your mask. That's all.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
No, I have nothing.
Councilman Martin.
Yeah, just a couple of things. We got a technical assistance grant through the regional planning agency, and that's about to kick off. What was the grant on again, Melissa?
We're doing the intersection of 50 and.
It's the corridor from 50 up through basically town center. But how much is the grant amount?
It's more than so they're going to be helping us study it.
Right. Yeah, I think there's okay. So that's going to be starting to kick off through the zoning revision committee. We'll be looking at that corridor on the basis of that grant. That's one thing. So that'll be another piece coming in here in the coming weeks and months. And then the other thing, I think it's time for us to take up the ethics law again. I know we talked about it. Things are starting to quiet down again or get back to normal, especially if we reopen in August. I think it'd be a good time to get that back on the docket.
Thank you. Councilman Aragosa.
Just like to ask residents to try to be patient in these times where the demand for services of all kinds have increased. I thought about this when Gina was talking about the lady with the pool and building codes. If you look into the industry, pool and fence building in these times have increased. tenfold. And, you know, there's the staffing in the building office hasn't. So give our people here the chance to help you and be patient with them while they're trying. Thank you.
On that point, you know, I shouldn't mention this. We've had our record number of pool permits issued this year.
Amazing.
And we are now, pool building companies aren't even doing any more this year because you have to put your money down for next year. If you don't put your money down for next year, you're not on the list. That's
I'm
how
doing so.
in demand, yes.
Just to give people an idea of what's going on in the world right now. You know, as most people know, I'm in the hardware business. One of our suppliers is a company called Oreo, which is the fourth largest supplier of independent hardware stores in the nation, in the world. They're in the months of April, May, and June, they're just the one department, which is their lawn and garden department, was 100% over the years previous, 100% over. You know, recovering from that and trying to keep up with that is almost impossible.
Yeah.
We're talking about 100% more they sold in those months. So when I talk about people needing to be patient, that's where I'm coming from. Understanding the facts that, you know, we're in a world right now where we've never been.
I also, thank you, Councilman. Just piggybacking on that, I have a couple comments, but one is not only are we super busy with pool permits and other things, and Melissa could attest to this, code issues seem to be out of control in this town all of a sudden. And I'm asking residents to please think about the code, think about your neighbors, think about your impact that you're having on your community. We are seeing things that we haven't seen in this town. And our code enforcers are running left and right based on just complaints. We can't even get out and do a proactive thing. We're just responding to complaints, repeated complaints about things going on in the community. Gina alluded it to earlier. Understand if you need a permit for a shed or a pool or a fence or something, but we're seeing people put junk to the front of their house. We're seeing enormous amount of boats in the front yard, RVs. These are all things that are code violations, and our people have to react to that. And the court's eventually going to get that, and it kind of clogs up the court too. So we're seeing a record number of those things happening, property violations, I would say, across the town. So just please be mindful on that. As we open up, another unfunded mandate, and it's pandemic related, is we're going to have to do a lot more cleaning in this room. Every time this room is used, just be mindful that we have to bring a cleaning crew in and disinfect all the hard surfaces by the time we're open the next morning. So that means overnight cleaning. We're getting quotes now for what that will be, but it's gonna be more expensive, and it's gonna be unbudgeted cleaning expense as we go forward. But this room will have to be cleaned Tuesday, so it'll be used Monday through Thursday at least. So they have to be cleaned before we open the next day prior. So 4 days out of the 5 of a business week. All the chairs, all the tables, all the doorknobs, all the surfaces will all have to be disinfected. That will not be cheap, but we're working on getting quotes now.
So just as a side note, as a cost of doing business in this day and age, that is part of what we have to do.
Yep. But it's going to have a budget impact, so I want folks to be mindful. On the good news side, I'll leave you with, we have started in our partnership with the county on our solar farm over on our dump. Our old dump is underway, so we're very excited about that. I think that's going to be a great project, and I've thanked the county in the past. I thank them again for that. I think it's something we've tried to do for years, and we were just too little to get it done. And so partnering with the county and going on with these other municipalities has helped make that happen. That's going to be a good project. And lastly, get to your Stewarts and buy the Glenville Bicentennial Blast. We keep, we're tracking the sales on this thing, and we want to make sure we're selling a lot of it. So get out there and get your Bicentennial Blast. It's something you can do to celebrate the bicentennial and not get together, and you can still be socially distant. So just want to remind folks, all Glenville locations, including the village, it's available. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move it.
And moved and seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. We appreciate it.
You want the sign-in sheet or me give it to Vicky?
Yeah, it could just go with our guest one.